So before you listen to this video, I urge you to listen to yesterday's video. Yesterday's video was essentially about, is it safe for a man to get married in a world of role reversals and emasculation of men? Now, as you can see here, looking through my YouTube channel, you can see where I check out Kevin Samuels and he makes a living chastising women in front of the world for their when I say women, I mean modern women, for their narcissism, their delusions, and their amoral or morally bankrupt behavior. And here's another one, the Tribe Report. They're doing very well in their little YouTube channel. I don't know if they're husband and wife or what the story is between them, but they're doing very well discussing, nothing but discussing modern women's delusions, their false hopes, their narcissism that knows no bounds. And right here, you see right here, modern women look down on stay-at-home moms. But see, the modern women now are the vast majority of women in the United States and, quite frankly, much of Europe. My guess would be around 90%, with maybe about 10% holding the fort down of sanity. Maybe, and that might only be partial. All right? So, with people making a living off of this subject now, where in the world, I'm going to address the United States today, where in the world did the U.S. go wrong? It was women's suffrage. Oh yes, oh I guarantee you I'm going to, if any amount of women watch this channel, you know that I'm going to get a lot of negative feedback, but I don't care. I do not care. I'm too old to care. I have witnessed with my own eyes a level of degrading behavior by women through my years that no man should ever see. I could talk to you for days about the things that I have seen from modern women. I'll get into some of that today, but it's just, to be honest with you, it would take days, perhaps weeks, talking non-stop for me to tell you some of the horrible things that I have seen these modern women do. Women's suffrage. Women's suffrage, U.S. movement, leaders, and amendment. Was a decades-long fight to win the right to vote for women in the United States. It took activists and reformers nearly 100 years to win that right. And the campaign was not easy. Disagreements over strategy threatened to cripple the movement more than once. But on August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was finally ratified, enfranchising all American women and declaring for the first time that they, like women, deserve all the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. And of course, like I said, if you haven't listened to the previous video, you need to do that first, because that sets the foundation of what I'm talking about today. Now, Christianity as a whole strayed from the truth far longer ago than the early 1900s. But this particular chapter in America has led to the Sodom and Gomorrah that America and the entire Western world has become today. It happened right here with the women's suffrage movement. At the same time, all sorts of reform groups were proliferating among the United States: temperance leagues, religious movements, moral reform societies, anti-slavery organizations, and in many of these women played a prominent role. Many of these women played a predominant role. But what was the real reason for the women's rights movement? What is her name? Margaret Sanger. Margaret Higgins Sanger. She was right in the thick of it. What was it really all about, folks? All right, let me explain something here, folks. I want you to please put your rational thinking cap on for a minute here. If there would have been no women's suffrage, as they say, if the 13th Amendment, I believe it was the 13th Amendment, then if the 19th Amendment had not been ratified, and women today still did not have the right to vote, let me ask you a question. Would abortion be legal today? You know the answer, just like I do. The answer is a resounding, with capital letters, N-O. So the women's suffrage movement was not about women's rights. Never was. It was about abortion. It was about eugenics. And I have done videos in the past concerning Margaret Sanger and her eugenics movement that moved to wipe out the populations of black folks in the U.S., Italians in the U.S., Jews in the U.S. and dark-haired hill folk. Listen to me when I tell you. Listen to me when I repeat somebody else who has said this over and over again. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And as a result of the women's suffrage movement, abortion on demand became commonplace. Enter myself at 18 years old, and as I explained to you in my previous video, many young men were jealous of me in my younger days. Why? Because I was a very handsome, good-looking young man. And let me tell you something, young men today who are listening to me right now. Don't envy anyone like me. Don't do it. Don't do it. It comes with a very heavy, heavy burden. My attempt today is to warn you, to tell you what the reality is. The young women that you dream about when you sleep at night, they are not little princesses. They are not sweet and innocent. It's just not true, folks. So I talked about when I was 18 and this 16-year-old girl trying to use her feminine charms to entrap me, and I left town and went down to Florida. And in my previous video I talked about how the women in Florida were 10 times worse. The flies do honey. I don't know if you can use that analogy or not. Like doubled and tripled when I went down there. And so there was a young lady who all the boys really wanted really badly. But she started showing interest in me, and I remember the day I had fellow roommates. There was like 5 of us in a 3-bedroom apartment. And there were an apartment complex very close by. 3 girls in a 3-bedroom apartment, and we used to sort of interact with each other. Nothing really sideways. But the one girl that all the boys wanted, of course, sat down beside me on a set of steps and started talking with me about life in general. Very pretty blonde. And then she told me that she had 6 abortions. This was 40 years ago, folks. 40 years ago. When I heard that, I just got up and walked away. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. She was 21 years old. How do you have 6 abortions at that age? Did she look like a slag? No. Did she look like some of the beat down, snaggletooth girls that I saw in Camden County, Georgia? No. I didn't say she wasn't from Camden County, Georgia. I said she didn't look like it. That right there, folks, caused me to carry a great weight on my back for the rest of my life. To have to hear that. Well, she eventually found herself a husband. But I wonder how many men she told that to before she realized that she's going to have to keep that a secret. Then, one of the other girls, one of my roommates had a crush on one of the other girls, as I remember. He was even dating her. He was even dating her. Treating her like a queen. Unknowingly being a simp, because back in those days that word simp did not exist. Then she gets pregnant by some other fellow who one of her roommates had a crush on. And I drove up to their, like I said, it was very nearby, but I drove up to her apartment complex one day, and I had to turn right around and we'll drive right on back because they were fighting. Oh, these were church girls. I forgot to mention, all of these girls were church girls. And then let's see. I'm trying to remember how this went. At that particular point in time, I went back up north, a couple of states up. But I wanted to visit everybody one more time before I was gone forever. And I wanted to see the family of the two girls, the mother and the father. They were very, very, very nice to me. I respected them wholeheartedly. So I went down to see them, and the mother pulled me aside, and this is what she told me. She says, "Henry, stay away from my daughters. They are nothing but trouble." She told me that she had the utmost respect for me, and she would not be able to bear to see them do to me what they were capable of doing. Right? So, the one who was pregnant decided that she wanted to have a little bit of alone time with me before I left to go back north and not to come back down there again. And it was basically telling me, so let me get this straight. She had feelings for me while the other boy was dating her, while she was screwing around with one of her roommates' boyfriends. And I'm sitting here. I get up and I walk out, I get in my car, and I drive home. Never to see these folks again. Now this is just one particular series of incidents that happened down there. Not even going to talk to you about the other. The lack of scruples was not just down there in northern Florida. No. It was just as bad amongst people I knew where I live now, and some who, when I went to visit my relatives in other states, there's some things that I really want to mention, but I can't. I just can't do it. So when I came home, found work at home here in North Carolina, and almost immediately, here comes another girl. All up in my face. Oh, she's pretty. Very pretty. Tells me she loves me and all this other garbage. And I get injured on the job. Yep. I get injured on the job. Broke my ankle in 3 different places, 3 compression fractures in my back. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. And so, while I was recovering, no sign of her, no hide nor hair of her. Never heard from her or seen her ever again. Well, that was good riddance. That injury that still plagues me today saved me from a horrible pit. Now, the problem is with young men, they have a hard time telling the difference between a good woman and a whorish woman. It's true. And the reason is because, quite frankly, even in my days, the vast majority of the women were whorish women. I want to go to Scripture. Proverbs 23. Verse 27. For a whore is a deep ditch, and this strange alien woman is also, the word Nachri is also a whorish woman. is a narrow pit. She lies in wait for a prey and increases the transgressors among, or she deals treacherously. The word bagad is to act or deal treacherously with men. Treacherously. So, eventually I meet my wife, I marry her. She's an innocent kind of a woman, but she is still, how do I say, influenced by the world that's around her. She wants jewelry and everything like that, and because of the type of family, because of the type of upbringing I was raised in, those things were shunned. And makeup on women was just unacceptable. So, once she got to know the people around, she began to realize that there were a whole lot of women that that I was acquainted with, and not in a good way. And it made her extremely uncomfortable. Who is this woman? Oh, that's so-and-so. Why is she always eyeballing you all the time? Was the question. And why is she always eyeballing you? That kind of thing. And I don't notice that type, but women, they notice that kind of thing amongst each other. Right? And she began to realize that in her own mind, which in truth was absolutely not true, but in her own mind, she had a lot of competition. But what was in her own mind was not true. She felt insecure because of those other women. I had to deal with, once I had experienced some changes in my belief system concerning religion, and it wasn't much of a change because I've always been since I can remember, I've always known that the seventh day of the week was Shabbat and not Sunday. Never in my family ever did we carry a cross around as a symbol, the mark of the beast, that's what it is. We did not celebrate pagan holidays like Christmas and all of that, and Easter. And my wife was raised the same way. However, this congregation that I was a part of since my family was a part of since I was a year old, decided that, oh yes, that's right, I have to mention this. The pastor was canoodling with a 16-year-old girl, and my dad spotted it. He saw it. It was in a room somewhere. I don't know how he saw it, but he saw it. And of course, at that particular point in time, this pastor believed that my dad had to be excommunicated. And so he did. Excommunicated my dad. he almost turned my mother against my dad. He turned a lot of people against my dad, but he didn't turn me against my dad. So I quit attending too, and my wife continued to attend that particular church, as they say. So then they listed my name at their headquarters as excommunicated as well. And my wife did not know that. She would beg and plead with me every Friday. Oh, please come with me to church. Oh, please, oh, please, oh, please. And I wouldn't budge. I wouldn't give an inch. I said, no, I'm not. I'm not going. And of course, it was at that particular point in time in my life that I started gaining traction and learning more and more about how the new covenant is for Israel. You see. And at that particular point in time in my life, I began to realize that the church, or the Jews, or Israel, I should say, does not join the church, but those believers must be grafted in among the branches of Israel, just like it is written in Romans 11 that I've gone over so many times that the preachers will never, ever discuss, ever. And then, right about that time, that is when my wife was diagnosed with cancer. So, but she continued to beg and plead with me to go to church, and she was even telling me that there is a newly divorced man who started coming to that church that's always wanting to sit next to her all the time, trying to get me to come to church. I said, well, you're just going to have to resist because I'm your husband. That little manipulation strategy didn't work. Now, I'm not here to talk junk about my wife, okay? So, a couple months before the day she passed away, she wrote a little letter. And she didn't show it to me. She just left it in a place where I'd find it after she passed away. And I found it, and in that letter was written something like this. Henry, I have the utmost respect for you because you have a belief system, and you stand by that belief system. And no matter what is thrown at you, you will not budge. That's exactly what she wrote in that letter. So all the trappings of marriage, all of it, could not hold a candle to that particular short little letter. She finally had to admit that I was right. Because beforehand, she used to always say, why do you have to be right all the time? And my answer was always very simple, because I hate being wrong. So, and I know that's a little bit sarcastic, but that's what I would say in response. So, that last letter, that little letter, was a final admission, her admitting that I was right. Young men, that's the best you're going to be able to do. Let me rephrase that. That was the best that I could do in my generation. There was no TikTok, OnlyFans, Facebook, Instagram. There was none of that back then. Back then, the World Wide Web had just started. Windows 95. I think Windows 95 came out about a year before she passed away. It was terrible back then for me with women. I mean, I can tell you what started happening after she passed away. And like I said, this is so early in the internet game. There was no TikTok, OnlyFans, and Instagram, and whatever, all kinds of social media. None of that existed. I don't want to give too much information out because I don't want the husbands, the current husbands of these women, to know what their wives were doing when they were young. So I have to be careful not to give out too much information. Well, shortly after my wife passed away, I'm not going to tell you how I ran into these two little girls, because if I did, then I would be telling the whole world what they were doing. And there sometimes you just have to leave sleeping dogs lie for the sake of their families. But I ran into these two girls, these two college girls, at the grocery store, minding my own business. And both were creeping into my life. Writing me little letters. It was so strange. They were both friends, and one was coming at me from this direction, and another was coming at me from that direction, and I didn't know what the heck was going on. I was, 33, and they looked kind of young, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I don't know what's going on with them. But they were one-upping each other. Every time one of them would do something, the other one would one-up, coming after me. And one of them even gave me a little card saying, trying to remember how it went, if there is anything you need, call me anytime, day or night. And then the last word was in bold, big letters, anytime. So I'm starting to get suspicious. Something is not right. More things were going on than what I'm telling you. Like I'm saying right now, I cannot tell you everything, because if I did, then they would be exposed. So I asked somebody, because I didn't really know them. They were in another town. They were, I'd go grocery shopping sometimes in the town that I lived in, and then the next town. And I knew more people in my town than I did over there, and I did not know these girls. So somebody who lived closer to me, I asked her, and I said, "Do you know these so-and-so and so-and-so?" Yes, I do. Those are good little girls. And that right there, that's an antenna up. Little girls. I'm like, okay. These girls, they told me they were in their 20s and were in college. That's not little girls. But this woman is saying little girls. So I asked her, because it sent an antenna up, a red flag up. I said, "Are they in college?" She says, "Oh no, they're still in high school." How old are they? 17. You see, they knew my situation, but I did not know theirs. And so we have the mouth of a Zur. Zur would be a strange woman, or way down here, a strange woman or a harlot. Is a deep pit, and he that is abhorred or causes indignation of Jehovah will fall therein. They thought they almost got me. And what were their intentions anyway? They were in competition with each other. They were seeking validation. And they found a freshly widowed man. They found blood in the water like sharks. You see? Seeking validation. They weren't initially they weren't interested in me. Then I had a conversation on the phone with the first one's mother. That ended that problem. Then I called up the other one's mother, and I told her what her daughter was doing. And her answer was, "So? What's the big deal?" I realized at that point I could not argue with the woman, and I better just leave it alone, because she didn't care. Now, I'm not going to tell you about the rest of series of events with the second girl, because if I did, she would be exposed if this video should ever go back to her husband. And I'm not about exposing people, folks. Blessed is he whose iniquities are covered, is what is written. And I have no intention of digging up people's sins. But at the same time, I have to warn you, young men, and I'm going to give you young women exactly what you need: a public tongue lashing. So I basically had to tell the second girl, myself, get away from me. Your intentions are not right, so you have to get away from me. Well, she kept calling me, and so I changed my phone number, unlisted my home number. She was smart enough not to come to my house, as she had done before, because obviously that would look like she's stalking. So, unbeknownst to me, every time my mother would go into that other town to go grocery shopping or do whatever, she would talk to my mother and ask my mother about me, about my son, and ask for my phone number. Well, my mother is not dumb. She's not stupid. No, she was not going to give her my phone number. My mother was very, very upset, distraught at the way that I was being treated by these women over the course of my life. And she understood perfectly why I did not want to have a woman in my life ever again. My dad, not quite as much, but I explained to him. I told him the older I got, the more I simply couldn't tolerate deal with the nonsense that women are getting away with in these modern times. I just simply can't deal with it. I could barely deal with the difficulty with my own wife. Remember, I told you that my wife understood. She got it at the very end. That's what's important. I cannot imagine what would happen if she was influenced by today's generation of women. So I had it pretty tough. And I've only scratched the surface, folks. Oh, I forgot to mention that little girl I was telling you about. She got married. She married her boyfriend. And they had a few children. And while she had her few children, she was still asking my mother for my phone number. And then one day, 10 years later, because I avoided the town that she lived in after that completely, and that town was only, 5 miles away, while the town that I lived close to was 3 miles away. So you understand why traversing from town to town would be an easy thing to do. Why I avoided the other town. And like I said, 10 years later, I go into the grocery store, grab me a cart, and what is the first thing that I see? Her and her children. And then she sees me and she comes over trying to hug me, and I just keep my arms down. Henry, where have you been? I've been trying to get a hold of you for these 10 years. And I didn't have anything to say to her. Nothing. So after that, I was finally left alone. So, I got to get a few things off my chest with you women today. As I said yesterday, it was because how women have steered this Western civilization to Sodom and Gomorrah state, to a state of Sodom and Gomorrah. This began with the women's suffrage movement, where women said that they did not want to be stuck in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant, which is basically a slander and a slam of the patriarchy. We read yesterday in the scripture that the man was made first and the woman was made second. That Jehovah told the man, you may not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And Jehovah, the Father, did not tell this to the woman. It was up to the man to tell this to the woman, and he did, and he added his own, neither shall you touch it. And what was the first thing that the woman did? As soon as somebody, a serpent, told her, she should have noticed right away when the serpent was talking, because none of the other animals were talking. As soon as she heard it, that it was good for food, that somebody else said it was good for food, she took it, she ate it, and she gave it to her husband, who didn't think twice about eating what she brought before him, because he trusted her. And that was his sin. That was the sin that brought him down. He trusted his wife. So you men out there, you trust your wife now after hearing what I just told you? I'm not telling you that you should or you shouldn't. I'm just asking the question, and each individual is going to have to take a hard look at their own life and in the mirror and judge for themselves. I can't judge that for you. So the women wanted to have the right to vote. Why? So that they can have a right to an abortion. Why? Why did they want a right to an abortion? Well, here's how the excuses went. Well, what if I was raped? And then we find out that many men went to prison and were hanged for rapes that never happened, including black men who never committed the crime. And then, when it was consensual, the women still, white women I'm talking about here, they still yelled rape and had men thrown in jail, including black men. But you didn't care. You wanted your rights. You wanted your right to do anything you wanted to do, anything immoral that you wanted to do. So what did you do next? You pushed for birth control. And you got it. Then people began to be even more promiscuous, and then diseases, venereal diseases is what we used to call them, today they call them STDs, started spreading around like wildfire. Not that they weren't around before, it's just that it increased dramatically. Another young lady that I knew, never had a problem with her. She was a wonderful young lady. She became a nurse. And one day, right around lunchtime, right straight out of the blue, she worked in, I believe it was OBGYN, in the birthing. She calls me one day, hysterical, just screaming in the phone. And I'm like, what's going on? I'll say her name, Samantha. What's going on, Samantha? She says, I hate these women. Well, I'm sitting here listening to the phone and she's screaming and hollering, I can't take it anymore. I don't know what she's talking about. I said, Samantha, calm down. What are you talking about? She says, these women are giving their children herpes and every kind of disease. I didn't know what to tell her. I didn't know what to say to her about that. She doesn't work. She's still a nurse. She does not do that particular. She does not work in that field anymore, birthing, because it was too much for her. It was too difficult. And she hated the other women for what they were doing to their children. They didn't care. Which brings me to the same topic, how women don't care what they do to children. When I was growing up, well, first of all, let me start by this, and every man knows what I'm saying is true. When I'm telling you this. Little boy, even though he's not even going through puberty, should not be exposed to these half-naked women. Well, we all agree on that. So why is it that you women think that it is okay for you to put your stuff out there in front of these little boys? You accuse men on a daily basis of being evil in every possible way with your stupid woke movement, and yet you women, you put your stuff out there in front of everybody, including little boys. This happened when I was a little boy too. Women walking around in their stupid little mini skirts, tempting little boys to try to look up it. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves, but you don't have any shame. Got your tits out, your big old cleavage showing. You don't care. You put your bait out there like a fisherman. You're chumming. You're getting all these fish to come up, and you don't care. You don't care if you're destroying the minds of little boys before they even have a chance to develop. You just don't care. It is you, O modern women, who has turned Western civilization into the Sodom and Gomorrah that it is. And the men did not have the testicular fortitude. They didn't have the balls to say no to you. And now, this world is so corrupt that the only way to fix it is to burn it up. It's on you, women. You did it. And just like Adam, that crime, that particular crime, that men in Western civilization caused was to let it happen by letting you flout your femininity against the patriarchy, trusting that you would not abuse your newfound powers, but you did. And you abused your newfound powers in the most flagrant, irresponsible, obnoxious way you possibly could. And don't you women go on the comment section and start bitching, harping, and moaning about the patriarchy, because I'm telling you, the patriarchy is coming back with a vengeance. Let me show you something in the scripture. You see, these things happened to ancient Israel too. And everything that happened to ancient Israel is going to happen to the Gentiles. It's going to happen to Western civilization. Isaiah 4. This happened in Israel. It did. And Western civilization is no better than Israel. Now, when in World War II, when Russia lost millions and millions and millions of men, it was still, in the aftermath, it was still around 80 something, or maybe 80 men to 100 women. Okay? I want you to think about that when you read this. This is going to happen to Western civilization too. It's not only to Israel. It already happened to Israel, but it's going to happen to you. In that day, 7 women will take a hold of one man, saying, "We will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. We will make our own apparel." What do the women today say? Well, if you go on YouTube and you listen to, what is it, Kevin Samuels, I guess what his name is, and a few of the other commentators, and I think there's another one, Peterson, okay, who correct these women, straighten them up. These women always are saying that they're always taking and taking and taking from men. They're literal harlots, they're whores. As they say today, hoes, that's what they are. But the day is coming that 7 women shall take a hold of one man. Why? Now, like I said, this happened in ancient Israel. It was because of war. Now, remember, Russia, it was 80 to 100, or 8 to 10. In Russia's worst times. So this right here, this situation is far worse. Far worse. They were going to take a hold of one man saying, we will eat our own bread. You won't have to give us any money. You won't have to hunt to feed us. We'll make our own bread and we will wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by your name to take away our reproach. You women, one day, it's going to happen, you're going to throw away this filthy menstrual rag, which is equal rights with men. That's what it is, a filthy menstrual rag. You're going to throw it away, and you're going to beg for the patriarchy to come back. That's what you're going to do. And you're going to do something like ancient Israel had to go through. All right? Now there was, I nearly missed, I had another scripture in my head and I can't remember what it was. And the reason why this happened in Jerusalem, this was the punishment, and once the punishment was over, then of course then comes a change on Zion right here. Well, there's going to be a change on Western civilization too. So I'm going to go to another scripture. Was it Revelation 18 or 19? Or is it 17? I'll start in Revelation 17 and see where it goes. Something's wrong with my mouse. Yes. I think I'll go to 18. In one day. Here we go. So this is speaking of Rome, but it's the entire Western civilization, folks. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto the sky, and Jehovah has remembered her iniquities. Reward her as she rewarded you. Reward Rome as she rewarded Jerusalem. So Rome is going to get the same punishment as Jerusalem did, as Mount Zion did. We just read about Mount Zion's punishment in Isaiah 1, verses 1 through 4. And so now this Western civilization woman, Rome, is going to have to receive it too. She has so much glorified herself. She's painted her nails, painted her eyes, painted her face, put fake eyelashes on, demanded of all of her many Johns and tricks, vast amounts of wealth. And then she's going to hit the wall, as they say. The wall is Jehovah, remembering all of her iniquities. How much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously. And all of you TikTok girls, OnlyFans, Instagram girls, and those of you who want to be like them, that's you. That's you as well. If the shoe fits, wear it. Live deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give to her, because she says in her heart, I sit as a queen and am no widow, I shall see no sorrow. Or you might say, I sit in place of the king, and I don't need the patriarchy, and I will never be in poverty. That's what you say in your heart, but you will. You will be in poverty. Not only will you be in poverty, there are going to be a severe loss of men. Men will die because they trusted you. And you will long for the patriarchy. You will weep for the patriarchy. You will be disgusted with your own sense of entitlement. Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death, mourning, and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is Jehovah Elohim who judges her. But gold of Ophir. Let's see here. More rare than see if this comes up. Isaiah 13. In this particular case, King James Version got it right when the other ones did not. I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. Now, this happened in Israel, and it will happen to Western civilization. And in fact, because Western civilization in Revelation, what was that, 18 or was it 19? 18 or 19? No, that's not what I'm looking for. So this is the day of Jehovah's wrath here. Behold, the day of Jehovah, not the Lord, the day of Jehovah comes. Cruel both in wrath, in fury, and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of the heavens and the constellations thereof shall not give their light, and the sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. That's the sixth seal. That's written in Joel or Yoel 2 and Yoel 3 when the day of Jehovah's wrath comes. I will punish the world for the evil and the wicked for their iniquity. I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terror strikers. I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man more precious than the golden wedge of Ophir. So, what I'm saying is, what happened in Isaiah, what was it, 1 or Isaiah 4, beginning in verse 1? To Jerusalem, to Mount Zion, is going to happen to Rome, aka Western civilization. Women, women, there will soon come a day you will beg for the patriarchy. You will do anything. Anything for a man. Yes, you will cook. You will clean. You will have babies for him. You will share with 6 other women, 1 man. That's what's going to happen. You can sit there and scream and squall about the patriarchy. You can sit there and talk about hating me all you want to. I don't care. I am numb to you women. You did this to me. You made me this way. I'm numb to you. I don't care about you at all. You have no effect on me. You gave me very thick calluses. I do not care about you anymore. And I hope you young men will take a lesson from my experiences, to watch out, not allow yourself to be taken down. Because if you do, you are subject, you become a slave of the government. That's right. They will take you for everything that you've got, with child support, alimony, anything else they can take from you. And the government profits off of this type of nonsense, folks. They do. That is a video for another time. I finally got my comeuppance on you women. I've had to stay silent for all these years. Well, I'm silent no more.